Please welcome to the stage one of North America's most influential wildlife advocates and conservation leaders, and the current Vice Global Chair for Sustainable Wildlife Use for the World Conservation Union, Mr. Shane Mahoney.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a very rare experience that one has the opportunity to live through history as it is being made. I am honored to join you in celebrating this rare and extraordinary evening in conservation history. For those of us for whom creation matters, for whom patriotism and love of our families and nations matter, and for whom philanthropy and citizenship are viewed as inseparable, this evening and the institution and the family we come to celebrate will stand as beacons of hope for the future of wildlife and for our long-cherished hunting and angling traditions. These few hours we share will place upon each of us the quiet burden of an example to follow, one that will provide future generations with an unparalleled opportunity to learn and to be inspired, and not only by the extraordinary wildlife exhibits presented here, but by the incredible story of how sportsmen and women have contributed to America's wildlife legacy. There is no equal to this individual achievement. There is no forerunner, no blueprint to follow. Like so many other American achievements, it stands alone, remarking a wondrous ability to marshal indomitable capacity, to dream beyond reasonable limits, and to reach far beyond one's grasp. Yet to succeed impossibly over and over again in ways that come to define the new frontier of human accomplishment. So it was with the nearly impossible constellation of intellect that launched your nation, with the pure magnificence, the near perfection of the Declaration, with the dreamlike victory at Yorktown, with the wisdom to move beyond the horrors of the Civil War, and with the honorableness, ladies and gentlemen, to rescue a world from the intentions of madmen and then restore it to the nation served, with the dignity to restrain what is clearly dominant power, and with the determination to lead the economic, technological, and military complexes of this world. We are all witness to this ideal we call Americanism, ladies and gentlemen, and just as surely we are all beneficiaries of it. So perhaps it was inevitable that this country would break the first stones of conservation and lay the pathway that has led us to this incredible evening. Nearly 150 years ago, in the absence of laws and institutions to support, in the absence of mechanisms to fund and knowledge to apply, in the presence of strident individualism and of strict religious interpretations of man's dominion over nature, and a belief in the limitlessness of the nation's wildlife resources, and a capitalistic spirit viewed as the very hallmark of citizenship, this country, your country, developed and matured a completely different worldview of man's place in nature, one of intelligent restraint and long-term vision. This view would see the nation's resources as the inheritance of future generations, not the free capital of any current citizenry. It would stand for the wise and sustainable use of these living resources and against their quick and destructive utilization. It would place a value on the irreplaceable wild beauty and wild creatures of the nation's lands and waters, and launch a bold new idea that human progress could be truly measured not by how successfully we could distance ourselves from nature and free ourselves from her limits, but by how successfully we could live within her means. This was a revolution. Thus, this nation set free an idea that would seed, eventually, the great labyrinth of policies, laws, and institutions and mechanisms that now underlie the unique achievement we recognize as the North American model and the North American approach to conservation. Its inherent strength lies not just in the prescience of its insight, ladies and gentlemen, nor in the boldness of its application, but in recognizing that it would be the incentivized user of the resource, the sportsman, who would become wildlife's greatest champion. This was an act of American genius, transfiguring the use of resources to become their saving mechanism, forging a secure future for wildlife from the cherished traditions of your nation's past. And it is difficult for us today to conceive of what these leaders rescued. Such was the scale of resource depletion they faced. Extinction faced even the most common of species: deer and elk, turkey and pronghorn. Indeed, the bison's sad fate was but one of a long list of egregious slaughters perpetrated upon the natural world, though it was perhaps the images of their bloated carcasses covering the landscape that finally stirred the nation's conservation heart and awakening. And what those early conservation leaders saved was the legacy we fight for today, the legacy that this evening and the remarkable wonders of wildlife and the sponsoring family stand for and with. And it is a legacy of a world where nature and humanity can coexist in fullness and in a mutual capacity to support one another and sustain one another. It is a world where children may marvel at the wild others they first encounter, and through engagement with them, learn to love them for their beauty and to work for their continuance, utilizing and protecting them in one unbroken, solidifying tradition. Of course, ideas are carried first on the shoulders of giants. They are wheeled into a nation's awareness by leaders accustomed to risk and invigorated by challenge, and to see the connection between what is right and what matters, and understand that an individual, like a nation, may do well by doing good. Such vision and moral compass gave rise to bold and inclusive leadership in the past, a varied company of individuals often differing in their political and social views, the Roosevelts and the Muirs. Indeed, this inclusive leadership is exemplified by the past presidents we were honored to sit amongst this evening, each of whom contributed significantly to the nation's conservation success. This inclusivity, ladies and gentlemen, must remain the bedrock of our conservation ideals. For this great cause is not and must never be a political one. It must rise above partisan politics and lift political philosophy to its level, not the other way around. We must have the broadness of perspective to be inclusive, but also the strength to recognize the practical realities of how conservation is supported and to lend our efforts to maximize both. Such reflections must inevitably lead us back to this evening, to the individual and the family who have brought us here, to the ideals they espouse, to the love of nature they demonstrate, to the commitment to community and nation they epitomize, and to the incredible philanthropy that makes possible the purpose and mission of the Wonders of Wildlife. The world of conservation, ladies and gentlemen, is my business. I know and understand well its history in this country, yours, in Canada, and around the world. And I also know what conservation achievement really means, as perhaps I have come to understand what it means in life generally. And surely both refer to living your life for something that will outlast it. John Morris and his family stand for this high purpose. Yes, we gather here tonight to honor them, to honor you, but we also gather here to be reminded that such devotion to ideals remain possible in this frenzied world, that a commitment to the legacy of generations one will never know personally remains part of this nation's incredible idealism. Conservation is ultimately about citizenship, and citizenship must ultimately be about conservation. It is the only hope for the natural world. It is the only hope for humanity. Thus, our traditions in conservation matter profoundly for us personally and for our shared human experience. The tradition of conservation in this country and the role that outdoors men and women have played in ensuring wildlife's future will be celebrated every time a person walks through the hallways of the Wonders of Wildlife. This is a priceless gift to conservation, ladies and gentlemen, and to our citizen traditions, a field that bind us and our nations together. We witness here tonight one of the very best examples of the best this country has to offer. It is an honor. It is an honor to have stood before you, an outsider welcomed as so many generations of others have been welcomed by this great country before, and to John Morris and his family. I extend my most heartfelt thank you for what you have given to me, to each of us here, to this nation, and to this world. And in remembrance of what Theodore Roosevelt so long ago expressed, I thank you and your family on behalf of those wild others who share this nation, this continent, and this planet with us, but who cannot speak for themselves. They matter above all else. I am confident in welcoming you, sir, to the very rare few who have made extraordinary contributions to the greatest of humanity's causes, conservation. And if I may be permitted, as a non-American, may I simply say, not only God bless you and your family, but God bless your amazing country. Thank you and good night.